All right, class, in this video, we are going to continue working with equations where we have variables that we need to solve for. And in this case, we're going to look at multi-step equations. And the big deal here is distribution. And you'll notice that I'm putting a lot of negatives in these examples because that is one of the key difficulties, I think, in working with multi-step equations where you have a lot of parentheses. It's tracking your signs. And it's the age-old problem for pre-algebra, algebra students is being able to distribute properly and to keep track of your negatives and positives. Very, very important. So let's start with this first example. And we know that there is a 1 there. And so that's going to be negative 1 times x, which gives us negative x. Negative 1 times negative 8 is a positive 8 equals 14. Now let's do something here really quick. This is something you have to put in your brain. That a negative times a negative results in a positive. A negative times a positive results in a negative. And of course, a positive times a positive results in a positive when you are multiplying. So the product, this right-hand column over here, that's going to be the product. So a negative times a negative is a positive times a positive is a negative, and a positive times a positive is a positive. You really need to take this little chart and lock it in your brain. I promise you, your life will be much, much easier if you will do that. So if we continue this problem, I know that I just need to subtract 8 from both sides, and that gives me negative x equals a positive 6. But I'm not solving for a negative x. We don't want to leave the answer there, so we want to solve for x. That means I need to divide everything by a negative 1, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. X equals negative 6. Now we can check this really quick. So let's go back and let's do some check work here. Anywhere I see an x, I'm going to plug in a negative 6. And I want to ask myself, does that equal 14? Yes, it does. Negative 6 minus 8 is a negative 14. Negative 14 times, so this would be negative 14 times a negative. A negative times a negative is a positive, so it does work. Yes, 14 in fact does equal 14. So I can rest knowing that, hey, unless I've made multiple compounding mistakes, I am in fact correct. All right, let's look at this next problem. We've got two different sets of parentheses here. So I know I need to distribute the negative 3 throughout, and I need to distribute the 4 throughout. So negative 3 times 4x is a negative 12x. Negative 3 times 3 is negative 9. Positive 4 times positive 6 is a 24. So that's 24x, and a 4 times 1 is 4. And I'm asking myself, does all of that equal 43? Now what I want to look at are my like terms, and I see both of these have the same variable. The variables have the same exponent. Those are in fact like terms. And so negative 12x plus 24x is a positive 12x. Minus 9 plus 4 is a minus 5 equals 43. And so from here I just want to add 5 to both sides and get 12x equals 48. I'm going to divide both sides by 12 and get x equals 4. Now you can take 4 and plug it back into your original equation, both there and here, and solve, and you can see that in fact will equal 43. I want to show you one thing here at the top. Actually, I'm going to squeeze it in right here, because one of the things I've noticed is this part right there is frustrating some students. And what I want you to think of when you're adding these negatives and positives, in this case, we know they both have an x, so you can actually drop the x in your mind. You don't need to worry about trying to do the x. But let's say we start, just work from left to right. We're starting with a negative 12, and then we've got a positive 24x. So that positive means I'm going to move to the right on my number line. I'm going to go this way. Well, how many places am I going to go? I'm going to go 24 places to the right. So 12 gets me to 0. Another 12 gets me to a positive 12. And that's the positive 12 right there. Another way to think about it is, since I have different signs, I have a negative and a positive, I'm going to take the difference of those two numbers, meaning that I'm going to subtract the smaller number from the larger number. And then you simply use the sign of the larger number. So in this case, the larger number is 24. I'm going to subtract 12 from 24 and get 12. And then the positive is attached to the larger of the two numbers. I'm going to use the positive 12. So a couple of different ways to think about that problem. Why don't we try one more? And we have to distribute the 4 throughout this set of parentheses. And we have to distribute the negative 2 throughout this set of parentheses. So that will be 8x plus 4 minus 2x is equal to negative 6x minus 8. Do not forget your rules about negatives and positives when you are multiplying. I'm going to combine my like terms, which in this case is an 8x and a negative 2x. That's going to simplify to 6x plus 4 is equal to negative 6x minus 8. And now let's combine all of our like terms and solve. So we're going to add a 6x to both sides. Why am I adding a 6x? Because of this negative. I need on the right-hand side, my x is gone. But if I'm moving my variable to the left-hand side, it means I have to move my integer to the right-hand side. So in this case, I'm going to subtract 4 because this is positive, and 4 minus 4 is 0. But if what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So these cancel, and these cancel. And I'm left with 12x is equal to negative 12. But again, I'm not solving for 12x, I'm solving for x. So I'm going to divide both sides by 12 because 12 divided by 12 gives me 1, or in this case, 1x. So negative 12 divided by 12 is a negative 1. Why don't we check this one real quick? Let's come up here and check it. Anywhere I see an x, I can plug in a negative 1. Now notice what I just did. I embedded these parentheses. You have to be very careful with these problems. You've got to learn to use your parentheses to set things apart. And here I'm going to do it again. I'm embedding this negative 1 inside this other set of parentheses, kind of running out of room there. But here, I want to start with inside the parentheses first. I'm going to do the same thing over here. So that's going to be 4 open parentheses. All right, negative 2 times, or excuse me, 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Negative 2 plus 1 is a negative 1. And that's going to be a negative 2 times a negative 1, and that's positive 2. Over here we have 3 times negative 1, which is a negative 3. Negative 3 plus 4 is a positive 1. So negative 2 plus 1. So this becomes negative 4. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. So that does work. I can rest assured knowing that this answer is actually negative 1. Guys, there's a lot to think about here. Again, I encourage you, learn how to use those parentheses. Watch how I'm doing it in this video. Remember that when a number is butted up to a number and they're butted up to parentheses, the math operation there is multiplication. So anytime you use these parentheses, that's the operation you're doing. All right, now inside the parentheses, I can do all kinds of things. I can do more multiplication. I can do division, addition, subtraction. You're going to see all of it. I can add fractions in here. But again, when we see a number butted up to parentheses, that's multiplication. Guys, rewatch this video. Make sure you send me any questions you have.